This story was submitted by a user. Hello, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're ready because today's story is about a job offer that seemed too good to be true, and it turned out to be something far worse. Before we get started, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and comment down below if you'd ever take a night shift in a place you know nothing about. Trust me, by the end of this story, you might change your answer. Now, let's begin. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. The best of times, the worst of times. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. The old in the east, the young in the west. All before us, all around us. So when I read that opening line of The Tale of Two Cities, I always think, yeah, it fits pretty well. However, what I wanted to say was that I was fresh out of college, broke, living off instant noodles, and going into massive debt to pay my rent. But I was optimistic. Yeah, I knew I could get out of this situation. It just needed a little bit of time and effort. And then one day, while I was eating an instant noodle sandwich on my way to yet another fruitless job interview, I saw a job advertisement on a community billboard. Night security guard needed. 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. Easy work. Cash paid daily. No experience required. I reread the advertisement. It sounded easy enough that it must be a scam. But I was so desperate that I decided to take a chance on it. The address wasn't in a bad part of town, but it was strangely out of the way. A single 4-story office building surrounded by empty lots. After reading the ad, I felt like the building itself was a character in some kind of weird mystery novel or something. When I arrived for the interview, the front doors were already unlocked. Inside, the lobby was dimly lit. A man in a dark suit sat behind the reception desk. He didn't stand when I approached, just slid a clipboard toward me. On the top page was a short list. Building security guidelines. 1. Patrol each floor once per hour. No exceptions. 2. Never use the elevators between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. 3. If you see the woman in the blue dress, do not speak to her. 4. On the 3rd floor, avoid looking through the glass conference room after midnight. 5. If you hear the phones ringing on the 4th floor, do not answer them. 6. Always keep the lobby lights on. If they go out, leave the building immediately. 7. Always lock the main doors at exactly 10 p.m. If someone knocks after that, ignore it. I laughed nervously. Is this serious? The man's eyes were dark and flat. The rules are for your safety. Follow them, and you'll go home at sunrise. I thought about declining the position right then and there. Something about this whole setup just made my skin crawl. But then I thought about my empty cupboards and the eviction notice on my door, and I agreed. My first night shift wasn't too bad. At 10 p.m., I locked the doors. At the top of each hour, I walked each floor. The building was silent, empty, and slightly colder than it should have been. The 2nd floor was all cubicles. The 3rd had offices and a large glass conference room. The 4th floor was completely dark, except for the faint green glow of exit signs. The only things that unnerved me were the general sense of emptiness and the fact that I didn't see a single soul the entire night. There were definitely people in this building, but none of them ever acknowledged my presence. I did find a friendly stray cat hiding in one of the cubicles on the 2nd floor, and I named him Midnight. That first night, I followed the instructions exactly. At 10 p.m., I locked the doors. At the top of each hour, I walked each floor. The building was silent, empty, and slightly colder than it should have been. The 2nd floor was all cubicles. The 3rd had offices and a large glass conference room. The 4th floor was completely dark, except for the faint green glow of exit signs. At 1 a.m., I walked past the conference room and caught my reflection in the glass, except it wasn't just mine. There was a second figure behind me, far back, in the darkened room. It didn't move, and I didn't look long enough to see its face. I told myself it was a trick of the light and kept moving. On my third shift, I saw her, the woman in the blue dress. She was standing near the elevators on the second floor, facing the wall. Her hair was long, dark, and motionless, even in the slight draft from the air vents. I remembered the third rule: do not speak to her. I tried to walk past without making eye contact, but as I passed, she whispered my name. I froze. I had never told anyone here my name. I kept walking. Her whisper followed me down the hallway, repeating my name again and again until I turned the corner. One night, the elevator between the second and third floors freaked me out. It was 2:15 a.m. and I was on the third floor when I realized the hallway was colder than usual. My breath came out in visible clouds. I reached the conference room and, without thinking, glanced up the glass wall. There were 3 figures inside. None of them were moving. All 3 were turned toward me. One of them was me. I backed away, heart pounding, and took the stairs 2 at a time. But when I reached the lobby, the lights went out. This time, I didn't run. I turned on my flashlight. The beam lit up the reception desk, and the man who usually sat there was gone. In his place was the woman in the blue dress. She smiled, and her teeth were too many, too sharp. I dropped the flashlight, and when it hit the floor, everything went black. The craziest part of the story is that I actually ended up taking the job. Why? Because the boss paid me so well. Every time I clocked in, I earned $200, no questions asked. I had enough money to pay my rent and buy groceries, and I was able to quit my dead-end retail job. At the time, I didn't understand what was going on. I just knew that I could finally breathe easy and start planning my future. However, I kept having weird experiences at the building. I kept seeing the same woman in the blue dress, and she would always run away when I got close to her. I never saw any other people, but I could feel them watching me, especially on the 4th floor. There was definitely something or someone up there. About a month into my job, I had a few run-ins with the woman in the blue dress. She became bolder, appearing in different parts of the building. Sometimes she would walk right past me in the hallway, but she still never spoke a word to me. Most of the time I ignored her, but once I accidentally bumped into her. I apologized profusely, but she didn't respond. She just stared at me blankly. Just as I was about to turn away, she suddenly reached out and touched my arm. Her fingers were freezing cold. I yanked my arm away and backed up a few steps. And that's when I noticed the scratches on her neck. They looked like angry red welts. And then I saw the blood seeping through her dress, soaking the floor below her. She didn't seem to notice the blood. She just kept staring at me. I don't know how long we stood there. It felt like hours, but it may have only been seconds. Then she turned and walked away, slowly at first, then faster, until she disappeared down a hallway. I didn't move. I just stared at the spot where she vanished. I couldn't scream. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. Finally, I blinked and forced myself to move. I had to tell someone about this, I thought. But then I remembered the job description. No talking to coworkers. Okay, I thought it doesn't say anything about talking to ghosts. So I didn't break any rules. But I still felt uneasy. A couple weeks after that, I saw the woman in the blue dress for the last time. It was late, probably around 3 a.m. I was heading up the stairs to the 4th floor when I heard the sound of heavy footsteps behind me. I didn't stop. I just kept climbing the stairs. When I reached the top, I turned and saw her standing in front of me. She was dripping wet, and her dress was torn, revealing pale, scaly flesh underneath. And that's when I really understood. This job was more than just a job. And those weren't just guidelines. They were survival rules. If I was gonna make it through the night, I had to follow them closely. As the months passed, I became more familiar with the routine and the building. There were some nights when I heard strange noises, but As long as I stuck to the rules, I was fine. I stopped trying to leave and accepted that my life was now divided into two parts: daytime normalcy and nighttime horror. And then one night, everything changed. I was on the third floor when I left crash. I rushed to the staircase and raced down to the lobby. And that's when I saw the doors at the front entrance were wide open. As soon as I stepped outside, I heard a voice in my head. Leave now. Don't ask questions. Just go. For a moment, I hesitated. I thought about going back upstairs to lock the doors and check the windows, but then the voice repeated itself. Leave now. Don't ask questions. Just go. I didn't need to be told twice. I ran to my car and slammed the door shut. But as I tried to start the engine, my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't find the keys. I tried again, but this time I remembered the words of the mysterious voice. Don't ask questions. Just go. So I closed my eyes, but the feeling of wishing I wouldn't end up in the hospital. To my relief, the engine sputtered to life and I drove away. Now, this is where the story gets a bit weird. You see, after that night, I didn't show up for my next shift. I wasn't planning to be honest. But the next morning, the boss showed up at my apartment with my paycheck for the next 2 weeks. He didn't say a word. He just slid the envelope under my door and walked away. These days, I keep the checks framed on my wall as a reminder of my time in that strange building. And sometimes I wonder, did I make the right decision? Should I have stayed and found out what happened? Or was it better to walk away without looking back? I honestly don't know. I still have nightmares about that job, but I'm grateful I found a way out. And that's my story. Thanks for listening. Stay safe out there.